can forgiveness, both giving and receiving, impact your health? Dr. Michael Berry, the Director of Pastoral Care for the Cancer Treatment Centers of America, is on.
Let's get it started. Ha! Let's get it started in here. Let's get it started. Ha! Let's get it started in here. Yeah.
Let's get it started in here.
Welcome to The View from a Pew, a conversation among Christians who are out to grow their faith by asking the simple questions, the tough questions, and the stuff you really wish your pastor would talk about. Come on now, let's reason together. It's your voice we want to hear. The phone lines are open, so join the conversation. Call 855-244-0077. That's 855-244-0077. Now, here's your host, J. Michael McCoy.
All right, welcome. It is the 21st day of February in the Lord's year 2012. I'm J. Michael McCoy, and this is the pre-Thanksgiving edition. Let me see, that would make it Thanksgiving Eve, correct?
Absolutely.
All right, Thanksgiving Eve edition of The View from a Pew, and we have a very special guest coming on the air with us today. His name is... I got to get my sheet. Thank you very much. Dr. Michael Berry, who is the Director of Pastoral Care for the Cancer Treatment Centers of America in Philadelphia. Now, I need to bring up the program that I can bring him on. We are ready? All right. Dr. Michael Berry, are you there?
I am.
Hey, all right. Nice to talk to you. Happy Thanksgiving.
Thanks. You as well.
How are things in Philadelphia? Did you guys really didn't get smacked by Sandy that hard, did you?
Well, actually, I got lucky. I was in Tulsa at the time, so I missed the entire thing. But I'm in Michigan today with my kids and grandkids. So
good for you.
Life is good.
Good for you. All right, now in your full-time job or your at-work job, you are a reverend and a doctor, and you are the Director of Pastoral Care for the Cancer Treatment Centers of America, and you're stationed at the one in Philadelphia. Is that right?
That's correct.
Now, what type of doctorate do you have?
I have a doctorate in ministry. It's not an MD. If you don't want to confuse your audience.
That's all right. But you're also a reverend.
Correct.
Okay. Now you're gonna talk to me like I'm a 6-year-old. How do you become both? That sounds exciting.
Okay. Well, I was in parish ministry for 18 years and had churches in Arkansas and Texas and then Chicago, and I got to meet some very special folks at the Cancer Treatment Centers of America, and over a period of time they invited me to go to their hospital and be the Director of Pastoral Care. I had written 3 books. I have now written 4, all of them about spirituality and health, particularly as it relates to the cancer patient population, and along the way, I picked up a doctorate at Fuller Seminary.
All right. Now, your program is called Release, and that is spelled boldly with an exclamation point.
Correct.
The Healing Power of Forgiveness. Is that also the title of one of your books?
No, the book is entitled The Forgiveness Project.
Oh, yeah, here it is. Okay, good.
The Forgiveness Project, and the program that we go out around the country teaching is called Release the Healing Power of Forgiveness, which is a program that we've developed at CTCA in Philadelphia that actually teaches people how to forgive. Some of the things that I've learned along the way is that I have yet to find a seminary, medical school, or university that teaches its pastors, MDs, or psychotherapists how to help people actually do this thing called forgiveness. And we've developed a program that over the years has proven to be quite helpful.
All right, now let me ask you this: Can we name the 3 most important ways to forgive? I mean, can it be broken down that easily?
Well, one of the things that we've learned is that forgiveness, or rather unforgiveness, which we define as the retention of the negative emotions of anger and hatred toward the perpetrator of harm, is now appearing in medical literature as a disease. Unforgiveness, by the medical community, is understood as a disease.
Really?
A disease is anything that interferes with normal functioning. And we have a much better understanding now of what the retention of all those negative emotions of hatred do to us physically. We ought to have a pretty good idea about what it does to us theologically, our faith, The interpersonal aspect of it, very often when we're filled with hatred, we isolate ourselves because no one wants to hang around people who are hateful all the time.
Okay, hold on. I got to stop you for a second. How are you tying hatred to forgiveness or lack of forgiveness?
Unforgiveness is defined as the retention of the negative emotions of anger and hatred towards someone who's hurt us, who's hurt you.
Okay, all right.
So that's how we do it. Actually, the paradigm that we use, by the way, is out of Matthew 18:35, which is forgiveness from the heart. But when people find true forgiveness, as we've defined it, then they actually feel differently. You know, when your heart is emptied of anger and hatred towards someone, you're really a different person. And it just so happens that we have a better idea about what's going on biologically with all that.
All right, our guest is Dr. Michael Berry. He is the Reverend Dr. Michael Berry, Director of Pastoral Care, Cancer Treatment Centers of America. We were excited to have you here today, and so I've got 4 of my fellow co-hosts in the studio with me today, so you may hear other voices. The first is Army Brad. Brad, say hi.
Hi, sir.
Bob Montserrat, who is a fascinating individual in his real life. He is a forensic scientist with the state of Iowa. And so it's always nice to have him as a part of our show because he kind of lets us know the scientific and, the scientific way of looking at things. Say hi, Bob.
I'm also a cancer survivor.
That's right, you are.
Wow.
Yes, hi.
Good. And my co-host for the show on Wednesdays is Tom Coates, and he always has great questions and is inquisitive. And if you lived in this market, you would know that he was famous. Mike's not on. Go ahead.
And he's not on right now?
Yeah,
can you not hear me?
Yes, I can.
Am my mic on? All right. Hi, Michael. Nice to talk to you. I'm glad that you're with us today.
Thanks.
And the other gentleman is Father Tattoo, who is in our production booth, but he is an on-air producer, so he may have questions for you also.
Okay.
All right. Now, the wonderful people at Hamilton Strategies obviously provided me with many, many sheets of information on you, and they're excellent at doing this. I don't know if you know how good they are at doing this, but they're very good. But one of the questions that they have here that I thought was really interesting is within your release program, and remember, it's the program for those of you listening. The program is called Release. Within that program, what kind of healing have you seen from those patients who have forgiven someone?
Well, in my book, I tell the 4 stories of our patients who went through it. I can, the kind of healing that they have found has been not only physical healing, but in several circumstances, it's changed who they are as people. We had a gentleman, for example, go through our program recently who was the superintendent of schools in Pennsylvania, in a school district in Pennsylvania, who said that going through the forgiveness program changed his life. We're not trying to help people feel a little bit better. Irvin Yalom is probably our culture's biggest and most well-known psychiatrist. He's an MD. And in one of his books, he said, the goal of his psychotherapy is not simply to reduce the levels of stress and anxiety over things that have happened in the past. The goal of his psychotherapy is to change people's character. And that's the same thing that we're trying to do with our forgiveness education program. We're not trying to just alleviate the pain in a person's past, which, of course, we anticipate happening. What we've learned is that when people actually truly forgive, when their heart is emptied of the hatred that they have towards someone, it changes who they are. It changes how they relate to other people. And John Jubis, I just mentioned the superintendent of schools, says that now when he goes to a board meeting, as an example, he used to go loaded for bear to go to defend himself because he knew parents were going to be there and making all kinds of accusations, and he'd have to defend himself. And now he doesn't do any of that. He goes to listen to the parents. He doesn't always agree with the parents, but the point is he describes himself as a different person. So, there's a number of stories that are in the book, but, that's just an illustration of the kind of thing that we see. It changes people's life when they find forgiveness.
The Reverend Dr. Michael Berry is our guest. He's the Director of Pastoral Care at the Cancer Treatment Centers of America in Philadelphia. Now, your book, The Forgiveness Project, by the way, you can find out more about this program and his book at releasenow.org. releasenow.org. In the Forgiveness Project, you talk about the healing power of forgiveness. How about being forgiven?
What does it feel like to be forgiven?
Yeah. Does that also help your patients who are, weighed down with the heavy burden of having a loved one or family member, not having any contact with them, being removed from their life because they won't forgive their dad or mom or brother or sister, whoever it may be?
That actually is not the topic of the work that we're doing or the focus of it. The focus is upon either interpersonal forgiveness, when someone has hurt us, or when we have been our own worst enemy, what we might refer to as being self-forgiveness issues.
I resemble that remark. Well, go ahead.
But a very interesting study on HIV/AIDS patients who, when they felt as though they were being hated by significant others because they had HIV and or they were gay or whatever the reason might be, that when they felt hated by other people, they were significantly less likely to even take their drugs, to drink their cocktails, meaning that their desire to live was significantly lessened. So one of the things that we've learned is that there's a very high cost to hatred. It impacts every aspect of our life. We can look at the front page of any newspaper and see that. We can look at our families. We can look at our churches. We can look at our marriages and see the high cost of hatred. Why would we be surprised to find out that hatred seeps down into the very molecules of our body?
Wow.
So we better understand what that hatred is actually doing to us physically as well.
Fascinating subject today with Reverend Dr. Michael Berry, who's the Director of Pastoral Care and the Head of Pastoral Care at Cancer Treatment Centers of America.
Michael, this is Tom. I had a question come into my mind as you were explaining. You must have some measurement of you keep talking about the hatred factor. Right. I mean, we all hold, I guess, minor grudges at least. What level of measurement do you do to determine if this individual is going to be significantly impacted by your treatment?
Right now, Tom, the only measurement we've been using are the patients that respond to the program that they've gone through. When we talk about the data that we're aware of and the impact of the hatred and internalization of the anger is from the National Institute of Health, which tells us that psychological stress can facilitate the growth and the spread of cancer, that a state of unforgiveness, and this is generally understood by all of the researchers on forgiveness, and there's a lot of them out there these days, they understand unforgiveness as a state of chronic anxiety. And that chronic anxiety creates adrenaline and cortisol, and I don't need to necessarily get into all of the specifics of that. But what we know about cortisol is that it causes your immune system to underfunction. One of its primary responsibilities is to shut down the energy that goes into defending us against cancer. So again, the study that we have done specifically on the forgiveness work has been the testimonials of the patients who've been through the program and their benefits of it, and not only that, their family members that have experienced the change. We are, however, with the help of Dr. Lauren Toussaint, who has his Ph.D. in health psychology from Luther College in Decorah, Iowa, by the way. He is he's our lead researcher on the research that we're doing on self-forgiveness. So I think we're going to have a much better, much more sophisticated way of talking about the specific markers that we've found benefiting from it.
The Reverend Dr. Michael Berry is our guest today, Director of Pastoral Care with the Cancer Treatment Centers of America. He's located in Philadelphia. His book is called The Forgiveness Project, and you can find out more at their website at releasenow.org. When we come back, what are some of the steps that Dr. Michael Berry recommends that someone take for beginning that road of forgiveness? We'll come back and talk about that next. It is a Wednesday. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody. It's a Wednesday, the 21st day of November in the Lord's year 2012. I'm J. Michael McCoy, and if I haven't told you lately, thanks for listening. I love this job, and I couldn't do it without you. I'm thankful for you. Right here on The View from a Pew, powered by WebcastOneLive.com. From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Drug and alcohol addiction slowly steals a person's identity, tearing away pieces of their life little by little until one day it seems like the hope of a happy future is gone and there's no chance of getting it back. Here at St. Gregory Retreat Centers, we can assure you that there is hope. Our unique approach to recovery begins with the understanding that the dysfunction and damage caused by addiction can be overcome, not just dealt with. Don't let another day go by. Call St. Gregory today.
It's like they want to get hit.
Need a body shop?
Minor Wreck Express saves you time and money.
If Tom Coates from Consumer Credit of America was your personal webmaster, Tom would filter out all bad debt emails. If Tom was your mailman, you'd never get any debt reduction junk mail. If Tom Coates was a lineman, he'd block any phone calls offering to reduce your credit card debt.
Hi, I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America, and we're still your best choice for credit counseling. We're local, we're accountable, and we can do more. You make the call when the time's right for you.
When it comes to competition, there really is none for Consumer Credit of America.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Have you ever been told you're not a good enough Christian? Well, we have too. Join the conversation. Call 855-244-0077. Now here's your host, president of the Not a Good Enough Christian Club, J. Michael McCoy.
All right, welcome back. 21st day of November, day before Thanksgiving in the year 2012. Thanks for joining us today. We'll remind you that if you do not have a church or you're looking to go to a different type of service for the Thanksgiving holiday, Lutheran Church of Hope is having a 6 o'clock service this evening and a 10 o'clock service tomorrow morning. John Annison will be delivering the message there, and Lutheran Church of Hope, of course, at the corner of Jordan Creek Parkway and Ashworth in West Des Moines. It's that little teeny building right there on the side of the road. You can't miss it. And if you'd like to be my guest, I'll be glad to meet you at the front door, and you can come sit with my wife and I and Army Brad today. But if you're looking for a great message here on this Thanksgiving Eve or tomorrow morning, I'd love to invite you to church and share the gospel with you.
Hey, by teeny, you're not talking about the place with the stadium seating then, right?
Yeah, kind of like that.
It's big stadium seating, seats a couple thousand?
Yeah, it seats 2,800. What's your point?
Oh, well, you said it was teeny, and I thought I had the wrong church.
I was being sarcastic.
Oh, because I thought maybe that church was blocking another smaller church.
Also, Friday, now we will not be here tomorrow. They will run a best of show. So I guess we will be here, but you probably already heard the show. But Friday, I'm really excited. Dr. Alex McFarland will be my guest. And why 10 answers for atheists. And if there's nothing I like better than a really good apologetic guy, and he is an expert at apologetics and also hosts a show called World Radio Program, host of Explore the World Radio Program, excuse me. So that's coming up Friday in the 3 o'clock hour on The View from a Pew. All right, our guest today via phone is the Reverend Dr. Michael Berry. He's the Director of Pastoral Care at the Cancer Treatment Centers of America in Philadelphia. His book, The Forgiveness Project. His work, fascinating work, is how allowing someone to learn how to forgive someone can physically make them healthier, especially if they're a cancer patient. And Tom, you've got a great follow-up question
just
for Dr.
a follow-up.
Berry.
Apparently there isn't a set criteria for these people that would measure out how much anger and hatred they were holding towards people that would bring them in. Then, Doctor, would there be a requisite counseling session with you or someone else to determine if this was a good patient prospect for this program?
Sure. We meet with each one of the patients for an initial evaluation, usually 30 to 45 minutes. And during that program, we make them aware of the forgiveness education that we do. And then if they're interested, then they follow up, and then we spend as much time with them as we need. Typically, it's an hour to 2 hours to go through the initial,
assessment,
educational product, but then we're there to meet with them, throughout their stay as well.
Okay, so there is an initial assessment to determine for you and the prospective patient whether this would be a program that would merit their time and energy and presumably some resources.
Well, it's not so much of an assessment. I was at a church in Rochester, and I gave a seminar, and a gentleman came up to me with an alcoholic. And he said, you can never tell an alcoholic that they are an alcoholic. And the reason is because they're always going to say, I can quit anytime I want. He said an alcoholic must self-diagnose themselves. They're the only ones that are going to know the condition of their heart and so forth, and to commit themselves to that program. My experience has been very similar to that with forgiveness. People, forgiveness is the word that we hear every time we go to church. It's very common, and I'm going to hopefully have the opportunity to talk about the theological aspects of forgiveness and why it's important from that standpoint. But, getting people to want to get motivated to forgive is the hardest part, and that comes from not so much of a formal written assessment, although we do that, and they can share that with us. We have people who say, look, I've been dragging this around for years. I've got to let it go. I can't drag this around anymore. So I think that, very often I think that people are so incredibly intuitive, Tom. They get it. They understand that they're harboring all this hatred. They just never have gotten around to finally dealing with it. And sometimes a life-threatening disease can trigger that. But for other people, it's not so much their physical health. For other people, it's their interpersonal relationships. And for others, it's for theological reasons. But so it's, again, the challenge is to try and get people motivated to want to forgive, and hopefully their faith would do that.
Reverend Dr. Michael Berry, the Director of Pastoral Care at the Cancer Treatment Centers of America, is our guest today. His book, The Forgiveness Project, is on the market right now. Also, you can find him on the web at releasenow.org.
Yeah, Dr. Berry, this is Bob. I had a question for those people. Do you deal with people as far as forgiveness? Is it better for those that are more accepting of their spiritual value versus those that are non-spiritual? Do you have a better result with those that are believers than those that are not?
You would think so. And I know that, inviting people to church for tomorrow, which is Michael did earlier, and talking about, new Christians and so forth, my experience has been that everybody values forgiveness. Every religion values forgiveness. We'd rather talk about it than do it, and we can parse in terms of under what circumstances forgiveness would be warranted, but everybody values forgiveness. The interesting thing is I've also worked with unbelievers, people who were just atheists, and they were able to find this cognitive restructuring, which is kind of the therapeutic word, but it's a changed mind, it's a changed heart. And invariably, whenever the atheists are able to find forgiveness from the heart, they sense it was a spiritual experience, that they never could have gotten there without help. They may not be able to name the name the same we do, but invariably, people who go through that process have a conversion experience, even though it's just kind of an awakening to the reality that there's a higher power out there that was able to help them.
Now, the forgiveness that we're talking about is simply a release for that individual, that person that is feeling the anger, is what I'm assuming.
Correct.
And they don't necessarily have to, the other person that they're angry with does not necessarily have to know they've been forgiven. Is that correct?
That's correct. There's a lot of misunderstandings about forgiveness, what it is and what it's not. And one of the challenges that we have, or one of the premises of our program, is that what keeps people stuck in pain are things that are untrue. And what we're trying to help them is to discover the truth that will set them free. We don't have any idea what that might be, but we've uncovered some of the most common. One of the most common is reconciliation. What we teach is that forgiveness is different than reconciliation. Reconciliation requires two or more people to get together and hug it out, as we say these days. Get together, like Joseph and his brothers when they came together. If reconciliation takes place, then forgiveness is probably a subset of that. But we would suggest that fundamentally they're two different things. Now, having said that, I also understand that reconciliation is important. We are to be ministers of reconciliation. In the ideal situation, we would all hope that people could be reconciled to work through their issues. But we also believe that it's possible to forgive someone who's been dead for 10 years, but you're never going to be reconciled to them. So at the end of the day, what we believe is that reconciliation requires two or more people, and forgiveness requires just one, just us before a graceful God.
So it's a matter of you release the pain, you release the anger towards a person, and then you definitely will benefit from that release.
Correct.
And then therefore, and I guess what I heard you saying was that if you harbor these feelings and this anger and so forth, it can lead to depression, which could lead to depressing your immune system.
Well, depression is one of the symptoms. The two most common symptoms of unforgiveness, the first is substance abuse. People are in pain, and they're going to find very creative ways to numb themselves from the pain that they're in. So substance abuse is the number one. The second, though, is fatigue. I mean, we don't realize what a burden anger and hatred is until you let it go. When people finally forgive, when they finally let it go, as I mentioned earlier, they feel differently, but very often they describe themselves as feeling as though like they're a bird let out of a cage. They feel brighter. The title of the program is called Release. So it's again, there's some very powerful changes that take place in a person's life.
Our guest is the Reverend Dr. Michael Berry, Director of Pastoral Care at the Cancer Treatment Centers of America. He's located in Philadelphia. His book is The Forgiveness Project. You can also find out more about him and his book and the program Release at releasenow.org. All right, I'm gonna take a leap here because I'm kind of famous for that, Dr. Berry. If I am physically healthy, I am without disease, but I have a horrible resentment problem. I have a forgiveness issue with, just a long line of people that I need to forgive. Can that cause the physical disease of cancer?
No, well, we don't teach that unforgiveness causes cancer, and thank you for bringing that, because this is a point I try and make. Unforgiveness does not cause cancer. Forgiveness is not going to cure it. Stress is not going to cause cancer, and relieving stressors is not going to cure it. Again, what we were saying is the very same thing that the National Institute of Health says, which is this: psychological stress facilitates the growth and the spread of cancer. In other words, when we have the stress hormones of adrenaline and cortisol, it flatlines our immune system so our body cannot defend itself against disease. So you could say that you're an otherwise healthy person, but if you're harboring all those negative feelings of anger and hatred, cancer isn't the only concern that you might have, because your body isn't going to defend itself against a wide range of diseases. Cancer is just one of them. You're going to be much more likely to get sick, colds and so on and so forth. We know the hypertension, heart disease, and other cardiovascular problems. So again, it's not just simply that, if you're a healthy person, that somehow or another it cannot have an impact upon your health. It does have an impact. By the way, the number one cause for depression and suicide ideation in divorced women is forgiveness. They're keeping all this stuff in. They've had a horrible trauma in their life, the divorce. Suddenly their life wasn't going the way they thought it would be, and they can't even decide whether or not they want to continue on with their life. And so they get depressed, they get sad, and they're traumatized by this. So, I don't know too many people who are really fun to be around who are hate-filled people. I certainly don't know anybody whose faith I admire if they're filled with hatred, certainly if they're Christians. So I think that, it can cause physical harm, it can cause emotional health issues, and it can also, I think, perhaps even most importantly, create spiritual health concerns.
Well, when you're filled with that type of hate, and I'm in a 12-step program, have been for several years now, and so as you're talking, Dr. Barry, I'm absolutely relating to what you said. And the idea that someone carries around hate, and you don't have to have a swastika on your neck to know hate. You don't have to dislike someone's sexual preferences to know hate. You don't have to look at someone and the color of their skin or where they come from tells you what hate is. Hate is when you were jealous of your sibling growing up because they seemed to get all the attention. Hate is that feeling you have against your father because of the way he treated you or your mother. Hate is something that you feel against an ex-spouse because you felt unfairly judged or unfairly divorced and it messed up your whole life. So those of you sitting at home, don't think for one moment that you're incapable of hate just because you love Jesus. Now, you'd think, but we're human and sin lives within all of us. Dr. Michael Barry is our guest. When we come back, some of the points that he goes through to help people recover from hate and learn to forgive. Live here on The View from a Pew on KTIA, Iowa.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Drug and alcohol addiction slowly steals a person's identity, tearing away pieces of their life little by little until one day it seems like the hope of a happy future is gone and there's no chance of getting it back. Here at St. Gregory Retreat Centers, we can assure you that there is hope. Our unique approach to recovery begins with the understanding that the dysfunction and damage caused by addiction can be overcome, not just dealt with. Don't let another day go by. Call St. Gregory today.
Of a new era begins.
Well, hi, I'm Rob Spearman. I'm a broker-owner of RE/MAX Real Estate Concepts in Des Moines, Iowa. Give us a call if you're looking at buying or selling a home, or if you're having trouble on your mortgage payments or looking to purchase foreclosures. We have the agents to help you, experienced, outstanding agents. Our office number is 515-276-2872. Or if you'd like to look at homes, go to our website, homeconnectusa.com.
Whether you're 10, 25, 50, 80 years old and beyond, everyone needs to live within their means. I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America. For almost a quarter of a century, we've helped people of all ages learn to manage their personal finances to benefit them far into the future. When problems arise, we've got the experience you need to make those debt problems go away. Got financial problems? Call Consumer Credit of America.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
If you sit in the back pew or the front pew, it's your voice we want to hear. The phone lines are open, so call 855-244-0077. Now, here's J. Michael McCoy.
I can smell that turkey cooking now. That good old butterball. 21st day of November in the Lord's year 2012. If you're Jewish, it's 5773, just so you know. Some breaking news that has been breaking for 24 hours. But yet they still call it breaking news. That's okay. Some of us are slow. It looks like there has been a ceasefire negotiated in the Middle East. It was interesting. Yesterday, they were talking that this had happened, but it didn't get released until Hillary Clinton.
That's exactly right. 24 hours delayed so Hillary could walk in and take credit for it and then hopefully get her out of jail free card for the Libyan scandal.
Yeah. That won't happen. All right, coming up Friday, we're going to have a great show with a gentleman by the name of Dr. Alex McFarland, and he is an expert apologetics. And I love guys who study apologetics, and that should be one of the best hours we've got. Maybe as good as the one we've got going on. This is pretty interesting. Dr. Michael Berry, the Director of Pastoral Care at the Cancer Treatment Centers of America, he's located in Philadelphia, is with us. His book called The Forgiveness Project, you can learn more about that through there, and also go to releasenow.org. releasenow.org, because the program is called Release. Now, Dr. Berry, I have to ask a question. I've got a phone number here that people can reach you at, 1-877-896-3698. What type of need would someone have in calling that toll-free number?
Well, if they would like to talk to me about a forgiveness issue, I'd be happy to do that. But also, if they'd like us to come to their church, we offer programs through the releasenow.org website, seminars. We go all over the country, and it's for free into churches. All we ask is that you have 35 or more people at the event, at the venue, and we'll come. I've been all over the country. Most recently, I was in Tucson, Arizona, and Rochester, New York, and every place in between. Casper, Wyoming, I taught there. So we're just going. We're trying to equip the church. You know, this is a little bit of the fulfillment of the Great Commission. Teach them to observe all that I have commanded you. And what did Jesus teach us to do when it comes to forgiveness? And beyond that, Michael, what is the gospel? You had mentioned that earlier. I would suggest that the gospel is the gospel of God's forgiveness. In Matthew 6, verses 14 and 15, Jesus says, "Forgive and you will be forgiven, but if you do not, you will not be forgiven." So I'll let you and other theologians, maybe you can pitch that one to Alex when you talk to him on Friday, but who's a great guy, by the way. But my point is that the gospel is forgiveness.
Right.
That's the essence of our faith. It's the foundation of our faith. If you're going to lead someone to Christ, we need to begin with forgiveness, because God has forgiven our sins. In 1 Corinthians 1:18, the Bible says, "The message of the cross is foolishness to those who are perishing, but to those who are being saved, it's the power of God." What's the message of the cross? My body broken, my blood shed for the forgiveness of your sin. The problem is I'm going all over the country talking to people in churches who are very unforgiving and hate-filled. And I think that puts them on very shaky ground when it comes to their faith. Again, the decision to forgive is the most important one. There's usually three motivators. One is because they want to feel better, just the physical aspect of it. The other is they want their interpersonal relationships to be different. They want their life re-peopled differently. But the third one is theological. You know, we as Christians ought to find all of the motivation that we need through the Word of God. Unfortunately, it is not something that people, I think, equate with very often with hatred. In Galatians 5:20, as an example, the Apostle Paul lists a catalog of sins that prohibit us from entering the kingdom of heaven. One of them is hatred. So again, if we're going to disciple someone into the faith, if we're going to teach them about Christianity, you have to start with forgiveness. That's the essence. You know, the angels heralded the reason Jesus was coming. His name will be called Jesus, for he will save them from their sins. How does he do that? Through his sacrificial atoning death on the cross. So I find all the motivation and all the enthusiasm that I need to teach forgiveness for theological reasons, so that people can be right with God spiritually. But also, of course, in what I do at Cancer Treatment Centers of America, we also know that it's important for them physically as well. So we know too much about the mind-body connection to not make that available to our patients. But unfortunately, I think a lot of people, you know, again, forgiveness is the white noise of the church, and it ought to be the absolute foundation of who we are as a people. One of the things that makes us unique out of all the world's religions, Michael, is how we treat people with whom we're in disagreement. We're to bless them and not curse them. We are to pray for our enemies, but how often do we do that? Instead, we pick up our rocks and throw them, or harbor our anger and hatred and so on and so forth. And I think it's very hard to bear a wonderful witness to what God has done for us through Christ if we're filled with hatred.
Dr. Michael Berry is our guest. He is the Director of Pastoral Care at the Cancer Treatment Centers of America. Bob, you had a question. Go ahead.
Yeah, Dr. Berry, you know, I think many believers that read the Bible, if they indeed do, see that verse that talks about, you know, if we can't forgive, then he can't forgive us. Why do people just ignore that? I don't understand why that particular passage is ignored, and so many people have so much unforgiveness towards many people. What is there an explanation for that?
I have one. I'm sure there's better explanations. If I'm right, if forgiveness is the essence of the gospel, if that's why Christmas, the incarnation, took place, if that's why Good Friday happened, is for God to let his love known for us, that we're no longer enemies, that we're now friends, our sins have been forgiven, then the one topic that the devil wouldn't want us to talk about is what?
Forgiveness.
Exactly.
Yeah, that would have been my answer to your question.
So I think it's spiritual warfare.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think the Christian churches are filled with hate-filled people, and that is not the best witness to the gospel of God in Christ.
Yeah, the accuser definitely wants to remove us as far as we can from a real in-depth personal relationship with Christ, and the quickest way to do it is to do the most un-Christ-like thing, and that is to hate someone. But, Dr. Berry, what about, and just play with me here for a minute, let's say that I don't hate somebody, but I don't want to forgive them. I don't need to see these people, I don't see these people, but when I think of these people, I really don't want to pray for them. I really want to remember, now I'm playing with words here, it's not that I hate or that I haven't forgiven them. I just don't want to forget what they did to me, so I won't allow myself to have somebody else do that to me in the future. Now, I know that's bunk, but I want you to give it like a 1 to 10 scale on how bunk it is.
Well, no, I don't think it's bunk at all. I think that there's a lot of misunderstandings about what forgiveness is and what it's not. What I would suggest is forgiveness does not mean we forget. We're never going to forget what happened, ever. Because that just isn't the way that the hard drive of our mind works. Whenever there's a huge emotion, whether positive or negative, it gets seared into our long-term memory. We're never going to forget it. So if you think just because you can remember it that you are not forgiving, then you can really sabotage yourself spiritually, because probably in all reality, if you don't hate them, you probably have let it go. But I think another emotion that's important to be aware of is anger. Anger is the feeling we feel whenever we feel powerless. You can't make someone do what you want them to do, and so we get angry.
Yep.
You can be angry at a child, as an example, and not hate them. So we think that they're two different things. I think that there are times in which we are angry at people for the way they behaved and for the way that they hurt us, but we don't really hate them. We just don't want to be around them. And I don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing, because forgiveness is a moral issue. I mean, it presumes that there is a right and a wrong. Somebody has wronged you, and you're angry about it. So the question is, what do you do then? Well, you don't have to hate them. You can let it go, but that doesn't mean that there aren't logical consequences for what they've done. So we teach that God is a God of justice. If somebody's going to be mean to you and be hurtful, why continue to allow them to do that? Why put yourself in harm's way to allow them to continue the vindictiveness? So I think that, again, being aware that forgiveness is not the same as reconciliation, but it does not mean that we abandon justice.
Reverend Dr. Michael Berry is our guest. We'll be back with him talking about a couple of the beginning points of forgiveness as we wrap up this program on this Thanksgiving Eve on KTIA, Iowa.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Drug and alcohol addiction slowly steals a person's identity, tearing away pieces of their life little by little until one day it seems like the hope of a happy future is gone and there's no chance of getting it back. Here at St. Gregory Retreat Centers, we can assure you that there is hope. Our unique approach to recovery begins with the understanding that the dysfunction and damage caused by addiction can be overcome, not just dealt with. Don't let another day go by. Call St. Gregory today.
It's like they want to get hit.
Need a body shop?
Minor Wreck Express saves you time and money.
If Tom Coates from Consumer Credit of America was your personal webmaster, Tom would filter out all bad debt emails. If Tom was your mailman, you'd never get any debt reduction junk mail. If Tom Coates was a lineman, he'd block any phone calls offering to reduce your credit card debt.
Hi, I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America, and we're still your best choice for credit counseling. We're local, we're accountable, and we can do more. You make the call when the time's right for you.
When it comes to competition, there really is none for Consumer Credit of America.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Come on now, let's reason together. The phone lines are open, and it's your voice we want to hear. So call 855-244-0077. Now, here's J. Michael McCoy.
Okay, we're back 10 before the top Salem Radio Network news, and then True Blue, hosted by Pastor Michael Mudloff, coming up. Before we get to a couple of the points, I mean, Dr. Berry's already mentioned some of the things that we do to begin that process of forgiving, but you had a good question for him, Tom.
Off the air, Doctor, we've been talking some, and the question that I had was, do you, or has there been any discussion, if you don't do it, of trying to measure, like some of the political polls we've gone through, they would try to measure the level of enthusiasm of the people they were polling. You know, how determined are you to vote and how passionate are you? Do you try to measure on the intro before the session begins the level of anger or hatred they feel to the object of their resentment? And at the end, at the exit of the program, do you try to measure how it sits then?
Interpersonal forgiveness work that we have been doing. We are doing that. We're about ready to launch with Lauren Toussaint's help. As I mentioned to you, he's a PhD in health psychology at Luther College there in Iowa. He is our lead researcher, and we're going to be doing all of that, blood draws and surveys and so on and so forth. So stay tuned for the self-forgiveness, because what we have found is that very often people are their own worst enemies far more often than other people have hurt them. So, for example, a cancer patient, they may have smoked for 50 years and now they have lung cancer, and they're filled with a lot of self-loathing. And so we're going to be doing a very deep dive into that. So stay tuned. Let's talk in about 4 or 5 months, and I'll be able to give you all the data that you need on that particular aspect of it.
All right. Thank you.
Dr. Michael Berry is our guest today. He is the Director of Pastoral Care in the Cancer Treatment Centers of America. His number to call if you want to talk about forgiveness, 1-877-896-3698. That's 1-877-896-3698. We'll put that on the screen for you. Also, you can visit his website at releasenow.org. All right, just a few minutes left. You talked about starting to forgive somebody. You pray for them. I've always heard that if you are in a resentment towards somebody and it has to do with business, you pray that they will be more successful than you are, that all of their dreams and hopes and goals will come true. You pray for them to become mighty warriors of Christ, and God, put your arms around this individual and love him and teach me how to love him. What are some of the other steps that you guys go through initially when you find patients that truly need to find forgiveness?
Well, our forgiveness education program is not a step program, not to step programs. They can be very helpful. But what we have learned is in the healing of diseases like cancer that there are things that are not within the doctor's control. There are certain things that you cannot anticipate. For example, Dr. Rudolph Willis is the chief of medical oncology at our hospital, and here's what he said. He said, the frustrating thing about medical oncology, you can take two people with the same disease, same stage, give them the same treatment. One does well and the other one doesn't. And the difference is their faith, their attitude, their belief system. Physicians cannot control for every variable. And so to set up a step program for the healing of a very difficult disease, such as unforgiveness, I think can often set people up for failure. If I tell you that there's 3 steps to forgiveness or 20 steps to forgiveness, and you go through them and you're just as angry as you were before, then you're going to wonder, is there something that you didn't do or understand? So we resist the temptation to reduce it down to a step program. Instead, we have an educational program where we invite people to explore what is it about forgiveness that they don't know, they don't understand, what falsehood is keeping them trapped in their pain. And we think that's a much more helpful way for them to enter into that journey toward forgiveness.
Yes, they say that every sin begins with a lie. And every forgiveness is founded upon some lie or some sin. Would you agree with that?
I do. I was talking to somebody the other day. They called me after being at the seminar who had experienced sexual trauma, sexual abuse when she was quite young. And, clearly that's a sin. She was sinned against, but you can only imagine the kind of pain she is. But, happily, she is now motivated to try and find forgiveness. That's a deep wound that can be healed, but at the same time, it's going to have to be a very prayerful journey that she goes on to try and find that. And hopefully, within a short period of time, God's going to show her what it is that she needs to know. By the way, I'm very familiar with all of the other research out there on forgiveness. Most of the research programs out there are step programs, and the reason is because they're created by PhD in psychology who have to have, the scientific method. Is it measurable, predictable, reproducible? And usually the people who are in their studies are their students. We just don't think that's the way people heal. God is not measurable, predictable, or reproducible. So we don't try and set people up for a step program. What we try and do is provide education and hopefully help them better understand the implications of choosing to retain and stay in a life of hatred.
Well, Dr. Michael Berry has been our guest today. I appreciate you being here on this Thanksgiving Eve, and hopefully there are people who will be surrounded by that crazy Uncle Joe that everybody's got in their family sometime here in the next couple days, and hopefully what we've talked about today gives people an idea of how to begin to forgive those family members and close associates that have wronged us or we feel they've wronged us. And my words, not yours, that unforgiveness puts a separation between you and the relationship you want to have with your Father God. So I think that as you learn to forgive, you'll also learn a greater relationship with your Father God.
Michael, there is a high cost to hatred.
Yeah, absolutely.
It permeates our entire life.
All right, the book is The Forgiveness Project. The website is releasenow.org. The phone number is, we'd love to have you call if you want to talk to Dr. Barry, 1-877-896-3698, and the website is releasenow.org. God bless you and your work, Michael Barry. Have fun with your grandchildren, and we look forward to talking to you in the next couple of months about the progress you're doing on your research for forgiveness.
Great. Thanks so much, and happy Thanksgiving.
You bet. Thank you. Okay, we're going to wrap that up for today. If you're on webcastonelive.com, stay tuned. The program that will air on the radio with Dr. Alex McFarland is going to be taped here in the next hour, starting at 4:03. So hang with us. This hour is going to go way too short, I'll tell you right now. Dr. Alex McFarland is a specialist on atheism and apologetics, 10 Answers for Atheists, and that's the Project 2026. So that's coming up next, live here on The Truth, 99.3 KTIA. And don't forget, the one thing I ask you to do is just pray. Happy Thanksgiving.